So we've been looking a lot at investigating calls and things of that nature through UCD as more of a tool that we've come back to after the fact. But if we want to be more proactive in terms of what we really use UC diagnostics for, then we really need to have some pin views and build a dashboard. Now we don't have as many customization options as we do with UC Foundation, but still we do have options to pin some views that are meaningful based off of what we're monitoring. Now in our dashboard view, I've gone ahead and unpinned just about everything in sight because I want to start with a clean slate here. We're kind of acting like this is a brand new deployment. So going back to our standard view at the top, I'm going to say, okay, I definitely know I want some graphs based off of usage. And we haven't talked a whole lot about some graphs or really generating them and interpreting them, but for now, we'll just use some arbitrary graphs and we'll come back to interpreting them later. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to have some pin graphs in view. So I chose out the entire pin graph component here. Now I would say in terms of the other two that should be pinned, this is my opinion, mind you, is that active alarms and active alerts should always be pinned. And if you have to choose between the two, I don't know why you would have to choose between the two, but if you do, then active alerts for sure. Now the reason for that is because in terms of proaction, you might think, well, we're just reactively reacting to alerts. That's not really true because these alerts, these events that get triggered by UCD are generated by UCD itself. So it's creating these alerts not based off of alerts or events that are coming into itself. It's making them based off of what it sees in the environment. That's how you're proactive with UCD. So that being said, and me getting off my soapbox, I'm going to go ahead and pin active alerts by taking my mouse and clicking on the pin icon at the top right. Now again, that's because active alerts, very important. Now we haven't talked a whole lot with active alarms, and really in this session we're not likely to, but I still want to pin that in this view, and here's why. Now recall that active alerts has to do with instances of bad behavior, poor quality, or events occurring within the UC environment. So that could be voice, video, or application sharing. But active alarms, now that's something where we have some odd behavior or some malfunctioning hardware equipment with UCD. So maybe it was dropped at some point and there's a disk error, or suddenly disk space is getting full, something of that nature. If that's happening, I hope that this stays blank because I don't want it to, but if that's happening, I absolutely want to see in my dashboard view an event for that specific issue. And that's why we're going to pin active alarms. Now, taking a step back, let's go look at our dashboard yet again. Okay, so we can see this is starting to come together. We don't have any pin graphs though. So for right now, rather than choosing something like a graph and then interpreting it for this session, let's for now just pick out something arbitrary, and we're just going to show what it looks like when you pin it here. So I'm going to just minimize that, kind of a personal thing. Now from this view, this network usage view, this is something where we're looking at how the environment is used, but a little bit less to do with bad behavior overall. It's kind of more so based off of usage, with some numbers being degradation. But anyway, without going into too much detail here, I'm going to choose a graph just based off of the voice metrics. I'll just choose this top one here. And I know this is a graph because these little buttons here with the 3 bars, these actually represent basically graph views that we can pull on demand. So I'll click that. And day view, sure, that's fine. I do like too, one thing about UCD is that when you hover over each of these little buttons, it does give you a description of what this is really representing. But that aside, I'm going to go ahead and pin this graph. And then, just for the heck of it, let's go ahead and pin out another one. I'll say, let's pin this one here, average duration. Now, it might not be important to us, but again, this is just an example. So yeah, I'll say go ahead and pin that too. Okay. So good, our dashboard view is starting to come more into play here. Now I'll just go ahead and pick out yet another arbitrary one. Actually, let's go ahead and just pick out another component here. Something I do want you to notice here as we pin these. Notice that we have active alarms, active alerts, pin graphs. You might see, even though we pin these in a different order, you might see a commonality among the two based off of a specific attribute, but we'll come back to that in just a second. For now, I'm going to say pin component view. Now you probably noticed it just now, but going back to dashboard view, something you notice, and just is more so just worth pointing out in terms of how you're making your dashboards, is that anytime you pin something, it's always going to be pinned based off of alphabetical order. And we can tell because active alarms. That comes before active alerts because, A and there and English lessons and so on and so forth. But either way, we pin component view last in the mix, but we still have it added right in the middle before pin graphs. So it just really goes to re-emphasize that point of whatever you're pinning, make sure it's important, because really in terms of how it's stacked up, you only have an option for alphabetical order. But in either case, we now have our dashboard. I'm actually going to unpin this, show you what that looks like here. There we go. So now we have just our graphs, our alerts, and our alarms view. But we now have a dashboard that we can work with here. In terms, though, if we did want to see other things, or really just everything, if, say, for example, we like the two-column look, then we can just go in here, and anything that's really pinned, something as being important, will be on the right, and then everything else will be on the left. So really, in its own way, it's almost like we have two views for our dashboard. But for now, that's what a dashboard, or really building one, looks like. That's about what the customization features are that are options within UCD itself. Going forward, though, we'll probably be hanging out in standard view most of the time. But regardless, that is how you build a dashboard in UCD, at least specifically on the manager role.